Okay, great. Thanks for waiting. We're back in action here. Okay. So our next agenda item is approval of the agenda. It sounds a little redundant, but so I would look for a motion to approve the agenda.
I move approval of the agenda.
We have move on second. Okay. Judy, how do you want us to vote? Electronically or? Okay, electronic, let's vote.
7-0 in favor.
Okay, great. Thanks. Next is public comment on non-agenda items. So this is a time that any member in the audience, in the public, can speak to any item that is not on the agenda. Do we have anyone who wants to speak? Judy, have we received any communications?
Not for this item. I do have one for an agenda item later.
Okay, all righty. All right, let's move along then. We have the consent calendar. This is the next item. We have 3 items. First is approval of the March 21st, 2023 regular meeting minutes. Second is resolution number 0723, a resolution of City Council of the City of Manitou Springs, Colorado, expressing the intent of the city to reimburse the Mobility and Parking Enterprise Fund for purchase of a license plate recognition system. And third, for an electric vehicle charger installation at Hiawatha Gardens. So if anyone wishes to, and any council member wants to remove an item, we can do that. Otherwise, I'd ask for a motion to approve and to accept and approve. Councilor Chandler.
I'd like to remove item G2, resolution number 0723 for questions to the finance director.
Okay, we'll discuss that separately. Do we have a motion then to approve the consent calendar items 1 and 3?
So moved.
Is
I'll
there a
second.
motion a second? Okay, let's go ahead and vote.
Seven to 0 in favor.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so now we'll discuss resolution 0723. That's the business about reimbursing the Mobility and Parking Enterprise for the license plate recognition system. Councilor Chandler, you had concerns, so would you start off?
Just a question. First of all, Becca, what is the current fund balance in the parking enterprise?
As we discussed right before this meeting, the revenues have come in much better than what had been forecasted for 2022. So it's going to be well over $1 million.
So my question to you and possibly to council to ponder is, why don't we just pay the $23,969? Well, it's already been paid, but why would we do a lease purchase and not go ahead and just pay, have it paid outright?
And I think that's a wonderful suggestion, just to go ahead and pay it outright. I would have still had to bring this to city council though for approval because it's not currently in the budget. So rather than approving reimbursing, then I would just ask you to just approve the fact that we will increase the budget for the Mobility and Parking Enterprise Fund at mid-year by this expenditure so that we are not out of compliance.
Okay, thank you. Is that sufficient or Judith, you're okay? And Nancy, okay, you've got a comment.
No, I just wanted, is there any benefit? Is there no benefit to doing it via lease purchase?
There is no benefit because interest rates are going up. And last time I talked to the banker, and this was before the Fed increased interest rates by 50 basis points, it was at about 4.5. So if you go ahead and pay it outright, you won't have to pay those interest charges. So I think it's an excellent idea. I just hadn't thought about it because it wasn't in the budget. And I tend to be kind of rigid in my thinking at times. I think it's a fault probably lots of finance people have.
Thank you. Any other questions for Becca on this item? Yeah, so we would need a motion to go ahead and approve this.
I will move that we approve increasing the Mobility and Parking Fund by $23,969 at mid-year to cover the cost of the license plate scanning system,
Okay,
recognition
Second.
system.
Yeah, and council, I would ask that you all, as part of that, that you ask for approval of resolution 0723.
Nope, that's not the
No.
right resolution anymore.
The
It-
resolution is, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So
My
you're
apologies.
just directing me because to change the fund will actually require an ordinance.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I'll
I'm sorry.
second.
Do we have a second? Okay, any further discussion? Let's vote.
— 7-0 in favor.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Becca. Okay. Next item is a presentation. It's proclamation 0223, a proclamation to recognize Child Abuse Prevention Month for April 2023. And Counselor Wolf has agreed to read the proclamation, and then we're going to have some comments from Katina Jones from El Paso County. So welcome, Katina. So Julie, if you'd like to go ahead and read the proclamation.
Okay, whereas finding solutions for child abuse and neglect, a serious problem affecting every segment of our community, requires input and action from everyone, because the well-being of our children today will shape the future of Colorado and our community. And whereas childhood trauma can have long-term psychological, emotional, and physical effects that have lasting consequences for victims of abuse and neglect. And whereas all parents and caregivers need support sometimes, and supporting all children and families early is far less costly to society and individuals than healing from trauma. And whereas community leaders, policymakers, and elected officials play a unique role in building a community for kids by understanding the programs and policies that support child maltreatment prevention, listening to parents' needs, and examining community planning through this lens to build healthy communities. And whereas effective prevention efforts succeed because of partnerships created among human service agencies, public health, the DA's office, schools, faith and civic organizations, the medical community, law enforcement and first responder agencies, the business community, nonprofits, and concerned citizens. And whereas everyone plays a role in preventing child abuse and neglect, helping to build thriving communities so that families and children may also thrive. Now, therefore, the Manitou Springs City Council of Colorado hereby proclaims April as Child Abuse Prevention Month in Manitou Springs, Colorado. No matter where you live, everyone has the power to contribute towards a brighter tomorrow for all children. Adopted this 4th day of April, 2023 at City of Manitou Springs, Colorado.
Thank you very much. Katina, welcome. I hope I said your name right. Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, press the button, let the light go green. Have the microphone about 3 inches from your mouth, and you give us your name and title, and welcome.
Sure. Thank you for having me here. My name is Katanya Jones, and I'm the Director of Children, Youth, and Family Services for El Paso County. Thanks again. Child Abuse Prevention Month, all across the nation throughout the month of April. I think I can safely say that we all would believe and honor that child safety is a cornerstone to a strong community, and one that El Paso County embraces. We are so very proud of the innovative and engaging ways that we support strong and together families, with child safety as priority number 1. The collaboration and partnership with community partners, faith communities, and other systems such as public health, and our large community of treatment providers is so critical and greatly appreciated. I'd also like to thank the community at large, the broader community. There are many professionals who are mandatory reporters, and many in the community also step up to report their concerns of abuse and neglect. Those living in El Paso County have caring hearts for those who are most vulnerable. Last year in El Paso County, 21,432 calls were made to the Child Abuse and Neglect Reporting Hotline. And of course, not all of those turned into cases. We don't expect those calling the hotline to know exactly what abuse or neglect looks like. Folks only need to know that they have a concern. Every bit of information can help caseworkers, help us collectively see the bigger picture of what a family is experiencing. And sometimes our response is just to connect a family to additional resources. So again, thank you for having me. I did bring pinwheels, and I think most of us are familiar. The national symbol for Child Abuse Prevention Month is our pinwheels. And so I'll leave them for you to plant in your gardens, maybe your pots around the house, since of course we're not quite yet garden ready, though it's beautiful outside. And again, the pinwheels are the national symbol of a bright and happy childhood that we want for all children. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the child abuse hotline. That is 1-844-CO, the number 4 kids. Again, that's 1-844-CO, the number 4 kids. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. And we have we have some comments, and before you go, we do have a copy of the proclamation for you, but I think we have a few comments. Nancy?
Yeah, thank you. And it's great education for us and a reminder for us. I guess I would like to just ask that once the school gets the new superintendent, that perhaps we start our council board meetings, because I have no clue of how Manitou is doing in terms of this issue, if we have a problem here or not, that we need to be addressing. So that would be probably the most immediate thing. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other comments from council? Guess not. If you'd like to come forward. Okay. That takes us to a public hearing. This will be the second reading and public hearing of ordinance number 0323, an ordinance of the city of Manitou Springs, Colorado, repealing and reenacting chapter 9.46 of the Manitou Springs Municipal Code concerning sitting, line, and street performing. And we'll start off by hearing from Alex Trefe, our public information officer.
Am I getting the PowerPoint presentation? Okay, cool. I'll do it quicker.
Alex, is this new information or updated or?
There is some new information, so it'll be just a few
Okay,
minutes.
that's fine. Fine. I just want to be sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. So good evening, Manitou Springs City Council, Mayor Graham. My name's Alex Trefe. I am the Public Information Officer for the city. And this is for the second reading of a proposed amendment to the sit-lie ordinance that allows for street performing specifically. So next slide, please. Just some brief history, the sit-lie ordinance has been enacted since 2016. Some verbal compromises between the police department and street performers created some misunderstandings about the ordinance and made it slightly hard to enforce. And so an amendment was proposed in 2020 that was voted down 2-5 on second reading. And so then we formed the street performing work group to come up with something that was a compromise solution to amending the sit-lie ordinance among stakeholders. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So the proposed changes, just as a reminder, and this also all touch base on what's different about this ordinance than what was proposed on first reading. So this adds a culpable age for displaying items for sale, street performing, sitting down and kneeling. That age is 13. It does not apply to lying down. There's street performing time limits in terms of what times you can and cannot perform depending on what time of the year it is. So from Memorial Day to Labor Day, it would be 9 to 9. And Labor Day to Memorial Day, it would be 10 to 7. And then there's restricted locations, which is 20 feet from a fire lane, crosswalk, or building entrance, except with permission, and 15 feet from an ATM, 40 feet from outdoor dining, other street performers, and sanctioned concerts. But with that said, groups of performers may perform together if the sidewalk is passable. A change to the ordinance, and the only really meaningful one, the other one was just kind of making it more legally clear. But the one important change from first reading is the addition of on a public bench, chair, seat, table, retaining wall, planter, or other similar above ground level public fixture would now also be a restricted location. And that was at the direction of City Council. And as with last time, there are also no amplified sound devices per this proposed ordinance. Next slide, please. And again, there's a progressive fine structure. So that would be first offense is $50, second 100, third 250, and subsequent $499. And with that, I will take questions.
Council, do we have any questions or comments for Alex at this time? Okay, thank you, Alex. Nancy, okay.
I just wanted to clarify again that at the end of the summer, the working group will get back together and assess how it went and if any amendments need to be made at that point.
Yes, correct. That's interesting because I forgot to mention it on both readings, so I apologize. But yes, it's a unanimous intent from the street performing work group to regroup in, I'd say, the October timeframe, analyze how it went, look at some data that's available, and see if any changes need to be made to that ordinance. And if so, we'll bring those to City Council.
And that the police are welcome to come anytime if it becomes problematic.
Of course.
Other council questions or comments for Alex at this time? Okay, it's not. I think we can go ahead with the public comments portion of the public hearing at this time. So I'll go ahead and open this to public comment. If there's anyone who wants to speak to this, this would be the time to do so. Any member of the public is welcome to comment on this agenda item. Judy, did we have any email communications on this? No, we didn't. Okay, it appears we don't have any comments, so I'll go ahead and close the public comment. Normally at this time, we would bring the city's representative back to expand upon any questions raised during public comment, but since we didn't have any, I'll ask council if you have any interest in, if you have any questions for Alex now, any last call. If not, I think we can go ahead and entertain a motion. Nancy?
I move on second reading and public hearing of ordinance number 0323, an ordinance of the city of Manitou Springs, Colorado, repealing and reenacting chapter 9.46 of the Manitou Springs Municipal Code concerning sitting, lying, and street performing. To approve.
Excuse me, I'll second.
Sorry, who made the second? Judith? Okay, thank you. Motion a second. Any further discussion? Okay, let's go ahead and get ready to vote. Let's vote.
7-0 in favor.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Alex, thanks for the work you and your group did. Express our gratitude to the others. Thank you.
Can I?
Yeah, Nancy, go ahead and make a
I
comment.
just want to say that I am very optimistic about this. And the fact that it will now legalize street performers is very exciting and very positive for our community. So thanks to the work group for putting in the hard work, because I know this was not easy to do. So thanks.
Great, thank you. Okay, next item, first reading of ordinance number 0523, an ordinance amending the zoning plan of the map of the city of Manitou Springs, Colorado, rezoning 121 Ruxton Avenue, the Twin Springs building, also known by assessor's office as schedule number 7405308012, Manitou Springs, Colorado, from general residential zone district to downtown zone district and accompanying minor development plan in MNR 2301. Cassandra Bresnan, owner. Great, thank you. And we have our city planner present. Hannah?
Great, thanks, Mayor Graham and members of the City Council. Tonight, we are presenting a rezoning from the General Residential Zone District to the Downtown Zone District. This is first reading, so this is just an introduction of the item, and 2 weeks from now, we would have the actual public hearing. So we do have a brief presentation prepared that goes over the request and why you're seeing this particular application at this time. Like I mentioned, we're rezoning from general residential to the downtown zone district. This building has historically been a mixed-use building with commercial suites on the bottom and 2 apartments up above those commercial suites. We are applying, or if the applicant has applied for a minor development plan to accompany this rezoning to establish a baseline plan that then future requests would be based off of. And that is a requirement in the new Land Use and Development Code. Currently, there are no changes proposed to the actual structure. So they're not proposing to make any exterior alterations that would be reviewed by the Historic Preservation Commission. What spurred this application was a desire to have a new tenant on the property. And previously, this building had just gotten approval of conditional use after conditional use after conditional use. And really, this building has operated as if it was zoned downtown since 1911 when it was initially constructed. So it was staff's onus to just go ahead and rezone it. That way they can have commercial tenants that are permitted in the downtown zone district and not have to go through a public hearing every time they need a new tenant. All right. So this is a quick zoning map of the particular property, again, showing that it's general residential. However, it is adjacent to or right across the street from the downtown zone district. This property is located on Ruxton, but not too far up from the roundabout. This is a quick snapshot of Plan Manitou. Plan Manitou does provide a guidance for future land use. In this particular area, it does say that this area is designated as central neighborhood near single family neighborhoods. But again, it is adjacent to that downtown future land use. And again, this building has existed in its current format since 1911. This is a quick snapshot of what that building looks like. As I mentioned, the bottom 2 suites intended and pretty much built for commercial land uses, and the top 2 being apartments. Another benefit to just rezoning this particular property is that the downtown zone district does not carry a parking requirement. So the new tenants would not be required to get a parking variance every time a like use wanted to move in, but technically wasn't under the scope of a conditional use. So as long as that use was permitted in the downtown zone district, they would be able to just move right in. And with that, we are recommending approval of the 2 applications without conditions. The City Planning Commission did recommend unanimously approval of these applications as well, and did not recommend any conditions. So with that, I think we do have the property owner represented in the audience today if you have any questions about the interior, but I'm happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Hey, council, do we have questions for Hannah? Julie?
Is there any off-street parking associated with the property?
No, so this lot is pretty much a postage stamp around the building, so there's no room for additional off-street parking.
Other questions or comments? Okay. All right. Well, Hannah, maybe if the applicant would like to come forward. Or and if you'd give us your name and address, sir.
Yes, Tim Bresnahan, 80 Waltham Avenue. And
If you could get the microphone about 3 inches from your mouth.
is this better?
Yeah, it is. Thanks.
Okay, sorry. Tim Bresnahan, 80 Waltham Avenue.
Great.
and co-owner with Cassandra Bresnahan, my wife, of 121 Ruxton.
Thank you. Did you have any statements you'd like to make or?
No, Hannah covered our application and intentions very completely. Thank you very much.
Okay. Council, do you have questions? for The applicant? I guess not. Well, since we don't have any questions or comments, it seems like the packet was pretty thorough. We could go ahead and entertain a motion. Judith?
Mayor, I would do that. See if I can get through it. I move to approve on first reading ordinance number 0523. An ordinance amending the zoning map of the city of Manitou Springs, Colorado, rezoning 121 Rexton Avenue, the Twin Springs Building, also known by Assessor's Office as Schedule Number 740-530-8012, Manitou Springs, Colorado, from General Residential Zone District to Downtown Zone District RE 2301, and accompanying Minor Development Plan MNR 2301.
I second.
Thank you. And it just is a point, Mr. Parker, the motion included two items. We need to approve two. Can that be done in one motion?
Yeah, that's fine.
It's fine. Okay, so the motion is good. Thank you. Sorry, do we have a second?
I second.
Seconded by Michelle. Any further discussion? If not, let's vote.
Seven to zero in favor.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That was quick work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that was a double barrel shotgun there you had, double barreled motion. Okay, next item, first reading of ordinance number 0423, an ordinance of the city of Manitou Springs, Colorado, amending Title 10 Vehicles and Traffic, Section 10.12.010, prohibited where, when, C of the Manitou Springs Municipal Code relating to the designation of color coding for parking restricted areas. And we have our Deputy City Administrator, Roy Cheney, to walk us through this.
All right. Good evening, City Council. So the purpose is we looked at city streets and other states, and they all have green designation for generally paid parking on street, and then yellow for restricted parking. Ours was different. The recommendations from the model traffic code and from general parking requirements is that you designate the colors the same so people know if they're coming into a city, what they're looking for. Currently, our paid parking is just concrete. So for them to understand that's paid parking makes it a little harder. So we propose that we change the ordinance that takes the yellow and makes it from no parking to loading zones and other restricted parking areas, and green, which was loading zones and other restricted parking areas, and make that paid parking. With our beautification money that we're going to be using this summer, we're going to be painting curbs. So this prompted us looking at our curb setup so we don't do something and want to change it later. So the idea that we have the money to paint curbs, that's the yellow, the reds, the blue for ADA, and then do the green for the parking zones for on street. So at this time, we recommend that City Council approves in the first reading to move forward on this.
Nancy?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a no-brainer, but that being said, do you have an education program? Because it's going to confuse the heck out of me
Yes.
as they park in wrong places because the curb is the different color.
Yes, the idea is to, if it's yellow, we're going to stamp it with the restriction for no parking, and then, but the green will be a little different. But if it's a loading zone, or it was a loading zone anyway, people were parking there anyway. We found people parking there. So we will reach out to our PIO, get an education program, put it on the website, and educate the folks. And of course, people coming into town will already know a lot of that. It's just going to be a re-educating of the community, and we'll do that 100% to try to get them. And we'll be understanding if some mistakes are made as we first start out the program.
Other questions or comments? So really, this is basic, the gist of this is we take the paid parking and paint the curb green.
Correct.
Okay. I guess it doesn't get a whole lot simpler. It's nice to have something simple every once in a while. Well, if there's no further discussion, I'd entertain a motion. Nancy?
Sure. On first reading, I move we approve ordinance number 0423 and ordinance of the City of Manitou Springs, Colorado, amending Title 10 Vehicles and Traffic, Section 10.12.010 prohibited when C of the Manitou Springs Municipal Code relating to the designation of color coding for parking restricted areas.
We have a second? Seconded by Councilor Wolf. Okay,
Can I make one statement? Mayor?
sure, yeah.
So on the ordinance that I submitted, the top section still had the wrong wording on there, but we will make sure on the second reading that's all cleaned up. Part of that might have been when we click, when we put it in the system, we have to pick keep it or clean, put a clean version. I think I clicked the wrong thing, but we will have that fixed before the next reading.
Okay, sounds fair. Any further discussion? Let's go ahead and vote.
Seven to zero in favor.
Great, thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Roy. Let's see here. And then we have the next item, first reading of ordinance number 0623, an ordinance of the City of Manitou Springs, Colorado, adding new sections 13.04.011 and 13.04.012 to the City of Manitou Springs Municipal Code concerning sewer lines and collection lines. Roy, you're a master of many trades here, so I guess you get to talk about sewer lines today.
Yes, I just have to shift gears and get into a different mindset here. So now sewer lines. So one of the struggles we find with the water department is the understanding of where the service line is and the collector line, you know, as one is the responsibility of the resident and one is the responsibility of the city. Because of the way they're connected in Manitou, it really depends on where you go. We'll find different connections. In most cities, you'll find like a 90-degree connection, makes it pretty simple. Here, it can be a 0 degree head on. But the biggest factor is going to be the size of the pipe. As a city, we can only service a certain size, and that's the bigger sizes of pipe. The smaller sizes are typically for the resident, and they have to service those through a company. And so we have to make that delineation between the two, because at this point, we end up having a lot of time on site trying to argue where is our responsibility and where's the resident's responsibility. So we just want that clarified so everybody knows who's responsible for what. So if they're in the memo, it shows a picture of a typical service line, but where we're going to go all the way to the collector line or main. It's also called the main. And it doesn't matter whether it's 0 degrees, 5 degrees, 90-degree connection. We will still always do the main line, and that's what we have the equipment to clean. It doesn't mean we don't try to assist residents, because we do our best to give advice. And if it's connected close to that area, we might try to see what we can help out with. But we will advise them that their actual line for the service line is from their house to the collection line. And that's what they have to service if there's a problem in their sewer. So the change in the code will just make that distinction, that it depends on the size of the pipe will determine where we make it that determination of our collector line to their service line as a bigger part of that determination. Because if we don't, we just don't know. Nobody knows. And so it becomes sometimes a day long or several day long trying to figure out where we are supposed to do our service. And many times we just can't service the small lines. So it makes sense to have that delineation in our code so everyone understands. And if they understand, then we have less problems, and they also understand where they are responsible for. So we recommend that we change the code to have put this wording in there that it comes down to the actual size of the pipe going into the service line, that it's a smaller diameter, and always the collector is a larger diameter. So, and those can vary as well. So that makes it harder, but it does delineate between where one is and another. And sometimes it's at the property line, sometimes it comes out in the street, but that's in Manitou. It's just the way it's set up. So it can be anywhere. So that's what we're looking for if on first reading to get approval to move forward to change the code. So there's better understanding in the community where our responsibilities lie in the sewer system.
Julie?
So just for clarification, if the service line runs into the road, it's the homeowner's responsibility to tear up the road, replace it, and put the road back together again. That's the homeowner's cost.
Yes, if they're going into the road system and it's their line, regardless, because there's some doing that at 90 degrees anyway, it would be their responsibility. However, most of these situations are going to be just a cleaning issue. Very seldom is it going to be a pipe that has to be replaced. Now that occurs, but we don't find that the biggest problem. The biggest problem is they'll get a backup in their line, tree roots, and all that requires is someone to come out and clean their lines. We don't have the equipment to do it. If we try to do it, we could break their lines, so it's a liability for the city. But yes, in some of the neighborhoods here, many of the sewer lines go out into the street and they are delineated by a 90-degree angle. This is just going to make it clear that the size will determine that and just solve that problem once and for all.
Okay, and then also, so do I understand that always the collector line will be smaller than the main? And
Correct.
so so you'll never have a they may differ from house to house or property to property, but there's never going to be an ambiguity about where the homeowner's liability ends and the city's began.
That's correct. The collector lines have to be larger to take from many houses the sewage. So from the house is always a smaller line. So we'll always know where that cutoff is now.
And is the main cement?
The main can be many things. There's clay. Now they try to use more PVC. There's really many different things everywhere, but Manitou has many different types of
And
sewer lines.
are there sections of our main that are like deteriorating and falling apart from age?
Sure. Sewage does, the sewage lines do break. We repair those, and currently we have a maintenance system. We also have, if you recall, a year ago, we had that scan done of all the sewage lines, so we know what's blocked, what's not blocked. And so staff is cleaning those lines now on a regular basis, using some strategy here to make sure they're okay. And if they're not, if we can't get through the line, then we have to see what's wrong and try to repair that section.
Are we lining the deteriorated sections or just replacing it with PVC?
It depends on the section and depends on what we're working with. So sometimes we line it, sometimes it depends on where it goes and how hard it's going to be. And then sometimes we have to just repair a section. So it really depends on what we're dealing with. And sometimes we don't know till we dig up and find it. And then we have to make some decisions. How do we make that work for as long as possible? And then, of course, we're always looking at some point what we're replacing based on our study that we did to get those what do they call that? I can't remember, but they did a sonar study. And so they go from one end to see if there's blockages and problems. And then if we can't clean it out, then we have to make decisions on, okay, what's happening there? Do we need to replace it? Find the section that's broken. Most of the time we can clean it out. Yeah.
The city staff does that. We don't farm it out.
That's correct. We do all the maintenance. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Judith?
Roy, I have a collector line main 101 question for you. Is there ever an instance when there's a problem in the main line and it backs up into a service line and there's damage to the service line that actually was caused by the main line? How would you know that? And also, is that still the property owner's responsibility then to take care of their piece of that?
Great question. So when we go out to a call, because sometimes it's not known what's causing the backup, we camera the sewer line and try to see where the blockage occurs. If it's a city problem, if we caused it and determine we caused the problem, then we take care of the problem, including what goes into their property. And we also have through the city code up to $1,000 in reimbursement for cleanup cost of sewage that may leak into the house. So we also immediately put that in place once they give us receipts. And we get that dispatched to them so they can help cover the cost of the cleaning. If it's if the city caused it. It occurs on occasion. We deal with that and try to make it right for the resident.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mayor, may I add to that?
Yeah, Denise?
That also goes into our SURSA. So that's an insurance claim. So it becomes a SURSA claim. They evaluate it also. They decide how much we would give them from an insurance perspective, because every dollar that we give is part of your rates. And if we give out too much, the rates are going to go up. And so we have to manage all of this as we go forward. So it does become a SURSA claim also.
Okay, other comments? Questions? None, I guess we're ready for a motion. Nancy?
Sure. I move we approve on first reading ordinance number 0623, an ordinance of the city of Manitou Springs, Colorado, adding new sections 13.04.011 and 13.04.012 to the city of Manitou Springs Municipal Code concerning sewer lines and collection lines.
Second.
Okay, we have motion to second. Any further discussion? Okay, let's vote.
7-0 in favor.
Great. Thank you, Roy.
Thank you, City Council.
Great. 151 years old and we're just defining what sewer lines and sewer mains are. Find it interesting, but I'm glad we're cleaning it up. Okay, next item, approval of the general services agreement with Pike Ride for 2 additional hub installations. And we're going to have Kevin Stevenson bring us up to speed on this.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Kevin Stevenson, Mobility and Parking Manager, City of Manitou Springs. Tonight, I'm going to do a presentation on the Pike Ride expansion. We're going to go over the current state of Pike Ride, some successes, and then the proposal for 2 new Pike Ride hubs and funding. Next slide, please. The current state of Pike Ride is there's currently 2 hubs servicing Manitou Springs. One's at Shriver parking lot and one's in Hiawatha Gardens. Pike Ride was in the pilot program from 2021 to 2022. There was initially a hub at the Econo Lodge, and at the request of the Econo Lodge, they had it removed to expand their parking inventory. During the program, the pilot program, there were a total of 650 trips in Manitou Springs. Next slide, please. So the expansion of Pike Ride would be city support of $75,000 to maintain and expand the Pike Ride. The $75,000 will be split between the Transportation Mobility Master Plan budget and the Mobility and Parking Enterprise budgets. The funds will be used for the installation and maintenance of the 2 new hubs, as well as the hub at Hiawatha and Shriver. The 1 new hub will be located at Lulu's downstairs, and the other one will be near the intersection of Manitou Avenue and Park Avenue on the southwest corner of Soda Springs Park. Next slide, please. Pike Ride successes in the Shriver parking lot. They have direct access to trails, creating safe and easy connectivity, great sidewalks access for people unlocking the bikes and securing the bikes. The Econo Lodge near Lulu's, there was great visibility from the road, and all of this will apply to the Lulu's hub as well because they're in the same general vicinity in the parking lot. Great access to the bike lane, great access to sidewalks, and the Econo Lodge was very easy to work with. I've spoken with the manager of Lulu's and he's very excited to get a hub in his area. Hiawatha Gardens had great visibility from the parking lot and great access to the bike lane. And the numbers I was able to pull through November of last year, there were 535 rides total. Next slide, please. Continued successes with Pike Ride. They provided free trips for the Commonweal Art Festival, the Heritage Brew Fest, the Spirit of Emma Crawford celebration, provided free ride coupons to the Chamber of Commerce, to the Econo Lodge, and they've also provided city staff and officials with bikes for the mayor's bike ride. And I'll open that up to any questions.
Hey, council, questions? Julie,
So the hub is going to be on Lulu's property,
Yes,
correct? And that's costing us what, like $50,000?
each hub is 20,000. So it'll be
Okay.
20,000 for Lulu's, 20 for Soda Springs, and then 35 for the maintenance and equipment.
Okay, and then if Lulu's decides they don't like that being there, they can just say, forget it. We want out, or what's the contract look like that you're suggesting? Or maybe you don't suggest any contract. What-
We don't,
that's-
we do have additional support in the URA area. So if Lulu's did want to remove the hub, there are locations in the URA area that would accept the hub.
And then our 20 grand would be gone.
I would assume I have Doug from Pike right here. He's the operations manager. He would be able to answer that question, but I assume it would transfer to where the new hub location would be.
Oh, you can just pick up the slab and bring it to the new location?
Lulu's would not require a slab. It's going to use existing asphalt. We're just
Oh.
setting the bollards and the racks.
I see, all of which could be moved.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
other comments? I guess, in looking at the information that was in the packet, so it said during the pilot program, 2021, 2022, there were 650 trips in Manitou. I don't know if that's a full 2 years or if it's a little over 1 year, something like that, but 650 trips, to me, it doesn't seem like a whole lot if we're looking at a cost of $75,000. And I realize this is a little bit apples to oranges kind of comparison, but $75,000 and if you're getting 650 trips out, that equates to a little over $115 a ride. Seems like quite a subsidy to me. To get something started, maybe that's what it takes, to provide a service at a substantial loss. But I have some concerns about the amount of money that's we'd be committing to this. And looking at another portion of the information, we have 30 of the $75,000 that's being asked for now. 35,000, that's for the program expense fee. And I guess that's 5% of the overall cost of Pike Ride. I realize, Pike Ride it has a greater presence in Colorado Springs, obviously, and maybe it has greater use, but I'm wondering if 5% is, if we're providing 5% of the rides, maybe 5% of the administrative cost is fair, but if we're doing 1% of the rides, I think maybe that cost seems a little high. So I don't know, Kevin, if you can speak to that, or if the gentleman could here.
I believe Doug would be able to
Yeah,
answer that
Doug,
question.
Yeah,
better.
so, yeah. This would be a good opportunity. So if you give us your full name, title, and address, please.
Sure. I'm Doug Ryden. I'm the operations manager at Pike Ride. And I live in Colorado Springs. Would you like my address? or-
Yeah, please.
I'm at 1325 East Bijou Street. in
Okay,
Colorado Springs.
great, thank you. And if you'll keep the mic about 3 inches from your mouth, that helps. Okay,
Sure. So last year in the Pike Ride system total, we did about 54,000 rides. And at 650 rides, it is a little bit over 5% of, wait, sorry, I guess that would be, math.
Sorry, did you say 5,400 or 54,000?
54,000.
Okay. It's like a little over 1%.
Correct. And we are hoping to, with the with the expanded hubs, we're hoping to expand rides in Manitou as well. Most of last year, we only had 2 hubs in Manitou. It was, I believe in May or June that we took out the hub at the hotel.
Okay, thank you. So does Colorado Springs pay 95% of the cost, or how's that break down? Or
I can't answer that. I don't have the answer to that.
okay, yeah, okay. All righty.
But I'm happy to come back with the answer if you'd like.
That might be a good idea. Yeah. I don't know if other counselors have questions here. That might be an appropriate thing. Nancy and then Judith, please.
Yeah, First of all, I'm a huge advocate of Pike Ride and Bike Share. I totally agree with the mayor that as presented to us this evening, it does appear suspect with the cost of it. So I think that there are a number of things. First of all, the successes, you talk about being a community partner and all the free trips that were provided, which were wonderful. But we have no accounting for those. So the 650 was for a pilot program, which we don't know the actual dates for that. And then later on, it says we've got 535 through November 22. So I don't know if they're added together, plus all those rides for Commonweal, Heritage Brewfest, Emma Crawford, and so on, which I do think that you guys are being amazing partners when you do that. So I absolutely, if council decides to support this tonight, I will absolutely support it for another year. But I do think that we need to do some serious look at the finances. And I have a feeling that they're very good. It's just, it's not shown to us here at all. So that's what I would like to see at this point. And I also am fairly convinced that once we get, the hubs that we've had have not been visible from the street, which I think is very problematic. And B, we've only had them at one end of town, which kind of defeats the purpose of having, when you're going into town to shop or to, get something to eat, you don't want to spend all the extra money to leave the bike there and get in trouble for leaving the bike there. So now that we're going to have a hub at the opposite end of town, I think that will increase our numbers as well. So again, I desperately want to support this. I want you guys to be successful in Manitou. I think that this is very important. So I'm willing to support it for another year, but we need to just get the data.
Yes.
Or at least the presentation that makes sense to us. Thank you.
Yeah, I think all that data can be found and reported.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. Judith?
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I too am a huge fan of Pike Ride. And I'm also a big fan of anything that gets anybody out of their car. So I have a little different take than perhaps the mayor. I'm thrilled to hear that 650 butts got on a bike for any length of time. And I think Pike Ride is a service that really speaks to what Manitou is and wants to become, which is more of a micromobility hub, a wellness destination. And so I do support it for another year. To me, I would like to see more data. However, I personally think this is money well spent. I think the most visible location that you had was at the Econo Lodge. And so I think, unfortunately, when that was taken out, that didn't work in your favor. And as much as I love the hub at the pool at it's really hard to see until you get into that parking lot. So I think that those two things have not worked in your favor. So I'm in favor of these two locations and supporting Pike Ride for another year.
Quickly.
Yeah, Nancy, go ahead. Yeah.
Another data point that I would like to see is how much we subsidize per passenger on the bus, because I think that would be a fair point of comparison as well. We are definitely subsidizing, and I'm also a fan of subsidizing any public transportation. So, and Roy looks very anxious to say something.
Okay. Roy?
I just want to talk a little bit about, connectivity and trying to get bikes working in town, and there's going to be some expense to get that going. Part of that cost is because we're putting in hubs. And that goes away next year. If we don't do hubs and we just pay, I think it's 35,000 then per year. If we want to add another hub, we would of course have to pay for the initial hub. So it's to get the equipment, the bikes. So that's the cost of doing business for, if we want to change to a mobility mentality, we're gonna have to spend some money to get there. I will tell you also to do this point on the Hiawatha, part of the discussion with them was moving that bike rack by the street. So we're going to move that, and we made sure we checked for that it's through planning department. It's okay to move it where we want to move it. So it's going to be more visible. And then connecting to the other part of town, which we didn't have. So to Nancy's point, if we ask people to get the bikes at Shriver, for example, and they just have to park it somewhere in Soda Springs, they still pay for it as well. But if they have a rack, they can put it in there. They don't have to pay anymore until they take the bike back down to where they want to go. So again, this is just the price to start to get mobility happening in town. And we have to kind of bite the bullet on that, in my opinion. And then that price goes down once we get the hubs that we need to have. So just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. Julie?
Thanks. I have no objection to this proposal, but I did want to throw this out there is that Judith Chandler had sent me a very informative article recently out of some newspaper that talked about how a study that was done in Denver, and they compared the cost to the city to share the purchase of an e-bike with Denver residents. I don't know if it was tied to them being low income or not. And they were comparing how many bike miles are typically ridden by someone who actually owns the bike versus the financial investment in doing a bike ride type thing that we're talking about, where you're just renting it for a few hours. And they said that there were so many more miles ridden on the bikes that were purchased as opposed to the picking up and renting it for a couple of hours, that they found that was city money better spent on cost sharing for the purchase of these things for their residents as opposed to the bike ride. So I'm just throwing that out there that I would like at some point, perhaps Judith could share that article with staff and council, because it's quite informative. But that being said, there's probably a place to do both. And I have no objection to this proposal.
Thank
May I
you.
respond to that, Mayor? May I respond?
Yeah, go ahead and respond. And then Denise.
So I'm happy to share that data with the rest of council. Happy to do that. There will be a proposal brought hopefully at a work session this spring to ask for the city to initiate an e-bike voucher program. I am working on that with some residents and some business owners. I also will tell you that Congress is considering a tax credit for e-bikes for coming up for the next tax season. So it's coming. So anyway, just to let you know, FYI.
Thank you, Denise. I'm sorry, Natalie, and then Denise, I guess.
So, most everything I was going to say has been stated already, but I just wanted to add that the Manitou Arts Center Board does plan on buying bike ride passes for all of its staff, but until there's a West End location, no one is interested in the pass. And so we are waiting for that expansion so that we can move forward. And I don't think that we're alone. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Denise?
Yeah, I just want to mention, this was brought up about giving some type of funding to our residents for purchasing a e-bike at the budget meeting. And I said I'd be bringing that back to council as we evaluate it and research it, but it sounds like you're working on it so we can pull out of that. But yeah, we were planning on doing it. And that was one of the takeaways that I talked about at the budget meeting.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. All righty. Anything else, council? Any further questions for these gentlemen? I guess not. Okay, I guess, a year from now, I can kind of imagine if we don't make changes, we may see not a huge change in performance. Maybe we'll have 750 riders now. Natalie, kind of thing you're talking about, that we're getting a toehold and it just becoming, accepted culturally. And Roy, you're nodding your head, and I think you've been down this path with a number of people and probably talked the idea. So, I think this is something I'd like to support, but I'd like to see some progress. So, I think we need to take this seriously if we feel like this is a good thing. And I think that's the general sentiment from council, is that we need to make this succeed. And there's, maybe the lot at there, the parking pad at the at Shriver, at Soda Springs, that'll be hopefully a big improvement, but maybe we need to do some other things to make ourselves a little more bike friendly. But I would, if maybe staff can think of some goals or some metrics that we can, compare the past years with with the future and see if we're actually making progress. We did have the community survey that was largely addressed to transportation, so maybe there's some benefit we can pull out of that. Okay. Anything else, council? Denise?
Mayor, we'll add this to the dashboard that you guys get once a month, and we'll see if we can do numbers from comparisons once they open, so we can add that for you
Okay.
to be able to evaluate.
Okay, great. Well, I guess we could entertain a motion. Nancy, or do you have something?
I was going to do
A motion, okay.
I move we approve the general services agreement with Pike Ride for 2 additional hub installations.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Chandler. Any further discussion? Okay, let's vote.
Seven to zero in favor.
Okay, great. Thank you. Kevin, Doug, thank you very much. And Roy, if you could come up with some metrics so we could measure what works and what doesn't, that'd help, I think. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, clarifying the status of task forces, working groups, and similar entities. I guess I'm the person here. Just a minute. So remember, I don't know. Do you want me to sit at the table? I think this will work. Okay, so if you remember going back to February, we had, we were in closing out a council meeting. We were in council correspondence, and the question came up about what really is the kind of legal status of the groups that we call task forces and working groups, and what's their legal status, and are they subject to the open meetings law? So, and I was tasked or volunteered to do a little bit of research on that. Mr. Parker provided helpful information on that. And so there's some slides here. They're based in large part on what Mr. Parker gave me. But Jeff, if you see anything there that if I made a transcription error, didn't understand it, then I expect you to shout, okay?
All right.
But, okay, so this is my understanding, and we'll see what council wants to do with this. First off, the city needs to be clear about which groups are official city entities and thus subject to Colorado Open Meetings Law and Colorado Open Records, the Colorado Open Records Act. So some things we have that we're very familiar with, we know because they're established by the city code. Examples would be the Planning and Historic Preservation Commissions and all of our advisory boards. Those are well defined. We know what their rules and regulations are, how they're composed. Council selects and approves the members of those advisory boards. It's pretty clear. The official city entities are subject to open meetings and quora. Become an official city entity, they would be made official by a resolution or ordinance, which is what our commissions and advisory boards are. And then the role should be clarified for existing and new entities by city council. So there's some gray areas. Next slide. Because then we have these other groups. So sometimes we call them task forces. We working groups, regardless of the term. These can be much more informal. Oftentimes they're grassroots effort, and they really are not codified under the city code. Any group that's not formed by the city via ordinance or resolution will therefore more clearly not be a city entity and will not be subject to open meetings or quora. The fact that the city works with a group or provides fund does not automatically make them a city entity subject to open meetings or quora. So some of the problems we encounter with the current vagueness that we encounter, staff can be put in difficult positions because expectations can be unclear. Priorities are, one person's priority is another person's is not. We need to make things clear. And this can include financial requests, and we need to establish clear levels of authority. Up to this point, groups membership oftentimes has been pretty informal. I think the task forces, they started as grassroots operations. It was pretty much how many people wanted to belong, and they just showed up. It was kind of a a very informal group. Same thing for the working groups, any number, no vetting of the membership. And we've noticed here, and the evolution of the open meetings law is kind of changed the flavor of how city organizations have to do business. It raises questions about, and applies clearly to our boards and commissions, but it would also affect, vaguely construed task force and working groups. I mean, that was the whole point of the question. I think council needs to clarify this. And council should be the one that sets priorities and expectations so that the staff knows what matters most and what matters next. So, okay, recommendations here. The informal groups have no authority under city code and consequently would not be subject to open meetings or quora. The official sanction groups would be, and they would be recognized by should be recognized by resolution or ordinance. And with that, again, it's open meetings, quora, that all comes into play. And these could have an advisory capacity to city council. I think there's one more slide there. Now, okay, now up to that point, I think I'm pretty much working off of Jeff Parker's comments. This is an idea. This is mine. It's I can't blame Jeff for this, but I was thinking, what would it make sense if a task force or a working group got to a point where it was making recommendations, typically about using city resources, money, and so forth. Would it make sense to give it the same status as our other advisory boards and just make it kind of an ad hoc board for a particular purpose? So, for instance, the library task force, we did establish them by resolution. So they are technically they fall under the Open Meetings Act and the Open Meetings Law. Should we just treat them as an advisory board? And if so, would that would, my thinking was it would kick in and it would then need to be organized. We'd have to formally appoint the membership and live with those rules. So, and there would be a few things I think we'd need to customize for those groups and establish a sunset time for the group to dissolve. And so it may be when the task is completed, or just say at the end of the year, if they haven't gotten the job done, we could renew them. City council could renew them. But if it looked like they'd lost momentum and they weren't going to actually pursue the goal, we would just let them dissolve. So those are my thoughts there. Judy, I think that was the last. Is there another? Okay. Okay, this is what I was talking about. Okay. So that's the quick and the dirty of it. Mr. Parker, I guess I would ask you to come and clarify anything I didn't get clear.
Yeah, no, I just think that ultimately it does serve the city well to make sure that there's no confusion about whether there's a group that's an official city group or they're independent of the city, because it's not a problem until it's a problem with liability issues, open meetings law issues. So I mean, the ones that are codified right now, no issues. That's your formal, perpetual existence type committees, commissions, and boards. Then I guess I'm thinking you have another category of entities that that you could form, maybe with a shorter life. You could do that via a resolution.
Jeff, can you get a little closer to the mic there?
Yeah.
I think it's a little harder to hear you.
All right, I thought I was.
That's better.
Yeah, so you have your group of entities or boards, committees, commissions that are codified. They're in your code. They have a perpetual existence. Those are simple. I think the real issue here is we want to deal with those other task forces that are out there and clarify whether they're going to be an official city appointed task force or board with maybe a limited lifespan and a limited task. And then you have the other ones that aren't going to be part of the city at all. So I just think that probably the next step you should take is whatever ones you have out there, I would advise you to just pass a resolution clarifying the status of them. And I guess if you want to have some of them or any of them be an official city working group or an official city task force that's basically formed by the city, you're probably going to want to put some parameters around what their purpose is, who their members can be, their lifespan, basically. Similar to the ones that you've got in your code right now, but maybe a little more limited fashion.
Great, thank you. Julie?
Mayor, did you say that that the library task force has already been determined by resolution as an official city entity? I thought you said that, but I wasn't
Well,
sure.
my understanding is that we did enact a resolution for the library task force. I certainly remember that we did for Hiawatha Gardens, but Denise, do you want to?
Oh, you mean that they're both official?
They were
Yeah,
both,
yeah.
they were both passed by resolution, not the members, but that there would be a task force for both Hiawatha and library. I'd have to pull up the resolutions to read it directly. But yeah, both of them were approved through a resolution.
Approved, like they were approved as being an official city entity?
What-
Because if that answer is yes, then we've been breaking the law. We need to advertise all this and have people, be allowed to attend yeah, but if we haven't, then I would certainly be in favor of declaring the library task force and the Hiawatha Gardens task force both to be official city entities, and that we put it on a, pardon me, work session in the near future to establish, as our city attorney suggested, a purpose, membership requirements, and go forward in terms of approving who's on those boards.
Okay, thank you. And I was contacted by a citizen who wanted to speak to this too, so I would open it up to him and anyone in the public who wants to speak. That was Rob Dannon had wanted to speak to that. So Rob, do you want to? Okay, Nancy, you go ahead and then we'll get Rob.
I don't want to jump the gun on this. There are 3 working groups, task forces, whatever you want to call them, that have been established by resolution: Hiawatha Gardens Task Force, the Library Task Force, and the Climate Action Group. And in those resolutions, the roles and functions were established. And additionally, City Code in 2.08.120 has 1 paragraph on establishing special committees. So we do have a start for this. To me, the biggest issue has been what needs to be open meetings law, because that was not made clear. I think this document that was sent out from Colorado Municipal Law was very helpful. I could split hairs on some of these things, but I would have no problem with expanding the city code on special committees that we have already, not separate and distinct from the code on existing advisory boards. And I would recommend that we ask our staff via our city attorney to just expand that, because I don't want to put such, I think we could go overboard with it, but I have no problem with expanding it to say, if it's a task force established by resolution, then it is, I think the critical issue is it's open, is it subject to open meetings law and quorum requests? But I don't know that all the other requirements are absolutely necessary, other than to do a resolution.
Yeah, I think it's up to you how you want to define and how you want to control our membership. I mean, I think that, it's interesting because the open meetings law basically says that local public bodies
Right.
quote, are what are subject to the open meetings law and then probably the Open Records Act too. And it's basically, it's a weird definition, but it means any board, committee, commission, authority, or other advisory, policymaking, rulemaking, or formally constituted body of any political subdivision. I mean, and that's pretty broad.
Right.
And so to me, it seems like if you are forming these via resolution, and regardless of whether you do their membership or purposes or whatever else, I mean, they're very likely going to be subject to the open meetings law.
Right. So that's why my recommendation again is to just expand what's already in our city code under 2.08.120. Because I would agree that has not been clear in the past. Make it a little bit more clear and not, do an entire huge ordinance like our special boards and commissions, because most of these are going to be time limited.
Yeah, I mean,
And function limited.
yeah, and in the resolution, you can just say this is a special committee under 2.08.120 of the Manitou Springs City Code. It's the intent that this be a local public body and official body of the city, and therefore subject to, and leave it like that.
Yeah, leave it like that. And I mean, once we look at it, we may have some tweaks we want to make, but
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that you want
that to me has been the clarification that's been needed.
right, I do think that it's important to have like a purpose and a scope of their authority, so you're clear when they're acting within.
And that has to be in the resolution.
Right,
That would be
Right.
incorporated into the resolution, which it is in those three
okay.
bodies, those three task forces that currently have. The roles and functions are elaborated in those resolutions.
But do we have, Nancy, an elaboration on the membership requirement and number of board members and such?
No, and I don't know that that's necessarily critical, as long as they're, that we may want to, and that would be part of the resolution. We could, in the resolution, we could determine if you want specific membership or if you want just an ad hoc group and formalize them, which is basically what happened with the Hiawatha Gardens Task Force. And I can read you what that resolution said. It was, in order to assist the project manager in investigating and making recommendations regarding the use and design of Hiawatha Gardens, the current Hiawatha Gardens Task Force shall remain convened. So that was how the resolution was stated. And I think I don't like to get so specific in ordinances and resolutions, particularly for potentially temporary things. So I think we can, if we had gone back now and didn't like what the existing Hiawatha Gardens Task Force was, then maybe change it in the resolution, establishing it, or we could now at this point, if you guys want to do another resolution on Hiawatha or any of these task forces, you could redo it and name the membership. But is that always necessary? I don't think so.
So I'm a little confused by what you said. Let's expand what's already in our code. Is that your way of saying that you agree that the library task force and the Hiawatha Gardens Task Force should both be declared official city entities?
I think that
Is that yes or no?
think-
Because I'm not confused. I'm confused about your position.
My position is that if the council establishes a task force by resolution, then within that resolution, we should say, we should give all the criteria and so on, that is the roles and functions.
So
And
you
potentially
don't
the
want the
membership.
library task force to be official, or you do?
I think the resolution would make them official, yes. And
Oh,
then, but the resolution is what would make them subject to open meetings law and Quora inquiries.
And you agreed the same with Hiawatha?
Yeah.
Okay, because
I didn't until I read this, and I could still split hairs on this. But I'm willing to go along because I do find it confusing.
You know, I mean, just one, I don't want to, like, I understand the desire to keep it as simple as possible. I just think you need to also consider who is going, if you don't have any sort of membership definition, I'd be a little concerned you're going to have just anybody out there saying I'm on the task force, or who knows if you're not controlling who's on the task force. They're an official committee of the city. I just think about, you want to make sure that you're clear who's representing these task forces, who's part of the city, who's not. So.
And that could be in it. You know, we could make that determination because it may be on occasion you want someone, a consultant from outside the city. So I think that can be handled in the resolution. I think
Absolutely.
The resolution can say, not the ordinance, but the ordinance can say the resolution will determine who the members are or something like that. So
Yeah,
it's
so I
some
mean, we could do
flexibility.
a very, I understand now. I was getting a little confused because I think you're thinking about maybe just expanding 2.08120 just to clarify a few things about how it actually works. And then you do the resolution and you can set the parameters in there. Yeah, that makes sense. I agree.
Judith?
Thank you, Mayor. I think that our committees, commissions, boards, and task forces do a tremendous job. You had a slide up there, some problems with our current vagueness. One of the things that I've had trouble with, and I've been on two of these task forces that we're talking about, is not enough transparency. And for me, the line in the sand is when we have task forces that are spending, allocating, or influencing vast amounts of city dollars and using or utilizing staff time. I think that we need to take a look at those groups being an ad hoc committee and whose membership is of concern to me, that we need to vet that.
I'm not saying that if that we went through that process, that anybody on any of these task forces, the membership would change, but so I have served on the climate action work group, and although at one point we did not, that group did not have continual city funding, but we did at one point, we were responsible before the Park and Rec Department took over the tree voucher program. So the $5,000 tree voucher program. On that committee, there happens to be a city employee who doesn't live in Manitou. And I love this person. They're a great person, but I think that we have to think about, should council have influence over the people that serve on these task forces? And I would say, yes. And that if we are spending, influencing, or allocating city funds and relying on staff, that city council should be involved in vetting the members. That's all I've got.
Thank you. And if there's no objections, I'd like to let Mr. Dannon speak, and then any members of the public, and we can continue discussion with council after that. So Rob, if you want to come forward. You'll give us your name and address, and then if you limit your remarks to 3 minutes or less. Thanks.
My name is Rob Dannon. I reside at 112 Cave Avenue. Before I start, I just wanted to, this was my first opportunity to thank the council, not only for the recent approval of the architectural design, so now we can move forward even greater with fundraising. I appreciate that. And also the funding that you have provided to the library project the last couple of go-arounds. Quite appreciative of that. I'm not the only one, of course. I also want to apologize. I'm just going to read a statement, a set of comments that I have. I don't normally like to do that, but I want to make sure all of my points are made, particularly within the allotted time that I have. So I'll just go ahead and do that now. My comments are both, I guess, proactive and now reactive, since you've had some discussion. And whatever I am going to read, I'm doing that with all due respect to council. I would like to address what has been my understanding by the city's legal counsel, that a resolution passed by city council constitutes an authorization of a task force to be placed under the auspices of the city. In the case of a Carnegie Library task force, it was thought by the task force that this merely affirmed a supportive and collaborative effort between parties, and it acknowledged the Carnegie Library Task Force's mission statement to work together with the city. But it's currently being expressed that this resolution would now bound this group to terms determined by the city to become more than a community-based group. It now makes this or any other community-based group, if by resolution, to fall under the strict guidelines of city ordinances and therefore no longer be a citizen-based group whose sole intent is to work with the city for the betterment of the community, only now to be directed by city operations. I would recommend other such groups to be aware of having a resolution established with the city, for this now would ensnare them as a city and not a community-based group. In relation to the city's memorandum concerning the agenda item on the community-based group, I would call, and this is a quote from the memorandum for this agenda item, call for unauthorized staff support or funding, end quote. I would offer that these groups are not spending city money or providing staffing support, but rather the city must formally propose and approve such funding and personnel support, not community groups. Also in this memorandum, the term, in quotes, potential danger is used. This negative connotation implies something nefarious with regard to grassroots efforts. There have been times when some council members have used degrading tones to those from a community-based group presenting in a public meeting, and another council member had expressed that some community-based groups meet, again, in quote, in secret. It makes one wonder if this is the main reason for wanting to bring community-based involvement under the control of the city. I would hope that city council consider the tremendous detriment of making almost all community groups fall under the auspices of city ordinances. For this truly would be the end of what the council's encouragement, more community-based efforts towards the improvement of our town. How this is enacted would very well kill the notion of community grassroots efforts. A vital and honorable characteristic of our town, and in turn, let me read that again. A vital and honorable characteristic of our town, and in turn, which I mean is that you encourage community groups and individuals to work collaboratively but independently with the city. What this would do is lean towards more of an autocratic form of government. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Nancy, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. I agree with you. And there's actually a very strong precedent for what you're saying back probably close to 6 years ago now, when the Climate Action Work Group was set up. At the same time, Pac-Man was set up. And the criteria then was that they would fall under the city, not under the city, but they would get staff support. Okay, Pac-Man chose not to do that because they didn't, for the exact reasons you're talking about. So Pac-Man has become a very robust community grassroots working group, and has, I believe, a very good relationship doing just what you said, their relationship with the city. On the other hand, the Climate Action Work Group, which was done almost at the exact same time, was codified with a resolution, and which again allowed them staffs or gave staff support for them. And I would also like to support your statement that none of these groups have the authority to spend any money at all. So they may make recommendations, and same as the advisory groups, they can make recommendations on their budget, but they have no authority to spend a dime of that money. So I just wanted to clarify that as well. So thank you for your comments. I think that they are very worthy of consideration.
Thank you, Rob. Does anybody else want to speak to this? Okay. Well, I guess in looking at this, when you look at the way we set up our advisory boards, it's got some relatively clear definition, and there are some things that we don't do because it makes sense not to do them. For instance, we have council liaison positions to the advisory boards, but we do not have city council members on the advisory boards. I mean, that's so basic, you don't even think about it. In the case of the Hiawatha Gardens Task Force, we have 2 city council members on that. Only 1 now? Okay, we had 2 for a time. There's no prohibition that said we couldn't have 2. The open meetings law would say that if we had 3, we just have to declare it an open meeting. So we've kind of got into this by custom, and by addressing other things, we've gotten into the situation where sometimes we're, elbowing each other, and we're potentially at odds with the open meetings law. So it's a good question, Rob. I mean, you bring up, how do we let people, be involved in the community and do things that they feel are important? And at the same time, how do we make sure that we don't have a group coming in and taking over and tasking city staff to do things and spending city money? I think in the case of the Climate Action Work Group, I mean, one of the things that happened was Conrad got hired to do some work, and I don't know that that was really would fall in the normal practice of the city. I mean, Judith, I guess you can speak to that.
The city hired him as a consultant, the Climate Action Work Group. Their only function was to make a recommendation on him as a candidate. So that was the beginning and end of our involvement with that.
Okay, so that's clarification there. We get into these things, and when the city hired him, I mean, that was I think that was done through, normal channels, but we have this little sideshow going on that maybe city council doesn't know about and maybe we should. An example, I mean, Alex got a lot of mileage out of his what was the buskers work group? Did you call it, Alex? Street performers work group. Okay. And that she had a short, simple, specific life and it did things and it really didn't become as grandiose as some of these other projects that are influencing how government money should be spent. And that's not to say if that's what citizens want and what council also believes in, then by God, let's do it. But we get into these kind of nebulous areas. I guess, Nancy, your thought was to refine the special committees. Thinking maybe give us more definition.
Yeah, to me, again, just expand on what's already in our code on the, what I said, special committees. And outline it in, if the city and the work group do want the access to staff and so on, then they should be codified via resolution with roles and functions in that, because I think by definition, all work groups and task forces are temporary, whether that temporary is at the end of a project or time limited. And the Carnegie Group was at the end of the project or could change now. Hiawatha Gardens was at the end of the project, whereas the advisory boards are continuous. They don't end. They've got roles and functions that are very strategic. So I would change the ordinance I would just expand the ordinance and include, and part of that would be to have the roles and functions defined in the resolution that establishes the work group or task force or whatever it ends up being called.
Okay, let's see what council's pleasure is. Natalie and then Julie.
Sure. Yeah, I'm interested in Nancy's proposal as well. And part of that also, I wanted to add the code update committee is another group that I think we should highlight as something that I thought worked really well. We had a period of time that we met and I think we became pretty close as a group as well, even though we didn't always agree. And additionally, Conrad was someone who we had said we want Conrad on that code committee to represent the environment on that update. And so we did in fact then also want a particular person who represented a particular group and we agreed to that. So I think that that is something to consider as something that has worked before, where we have been able to be that specific and I think successful.
Okay, thank you. Julie?
Yes, I don't know if this is appropriate, but I'd like to move that the library task force and the Hiawatha Gardens task force both be declared as official city entities, and that soon there be an agenda item for us to establish the purpose and membership requirements for both of those task forces. So that's my motion.
Do we have a second?
No, okay.
guess
If
we'll
they're
say-
not official, are they already official, both of them?
Both have been established.
But
via
they have,
resolution.
okay, so the second part though is, and I take the city attorney's advice to heart. Since we do not have any city council declaration as to the purpose or membership requirements, that's a problem. For example, like the law of agency. So if Joe Schmo tells the Gazette that they're on the library task force and that blah, blah, blah is true, or maybe even gives permission to some other group to come ahead and do something, they have the appearance of authority because we haven't declared who's in charge or who's on that committee. So I didn't word it as well as Jeff did, but I'm just trying to say that it's so loosey-goosey that it's kind of ridiculous to me. If these two groups are already official, that's fine. We need to put it on the agenda to establish what the membership requirements are. I mean, are we going to allow Ukrainians to join the committee? I mean, it shouldn't be that controversial, but I think it should be done. I think it's legally appropriate.
No, and I have no problem with that being put in a resolution for any future groups. And I can't speak to the Library Task Force resolution. I can speak to the Hiawatha Gardens Task Force resolution, which does establish the membership as the existing, back at the time that the resolution was put in place. It just said in order to assist the project manager in investigating and making recommendations regarding the use and design of Hiawatha Gardens, the current Hiawatha Gardens Task Force, which had been named at the time, shall remain convened until such time as construction plans are approved by city council and construction.
So
funding
there is
secured.
no membership requirement that I've heard from what you just said.
Because at the time this resolution.
Well, I don't
was-
mean an excuse. I
I'm-
get
I'm
it.
not
That
making- I'm not
I'm
making
just
an
saying, I
excuse.
think that's something we should do. That's what our city attorney has advised we
Right,
do.
and
I don't completely understand why you're so resistant, but that's my recommendation.
I'm not in Lister's, I'm saying that at the time we had an existing task force and the council knew what that membership was. So I think that it was just expanding that. So I have no problems with redoing the resolution. And, if council wants to dictate who they want on it, that's fine, or not on it. And oh, by the way, I never really wanted to be on it. Well, I kind of did, but I have volunteered multiple times to go off it, and I tried to find other people to get onto it. So I hope that I'm not part of the cause of this.
I didn't mean to suggest that you were the cause of anything. I just feel like we should have a purpose and a membership that's specified and it's approved by council. And it sounds like from today forward, we're going to start obeying the law and comply with all the open records laws for both of those task forces. And I think that's great.
And I think, Julie, I do think that we should go in and clarify the purpose and the scope of the existing task forces. The fact we've already passed a resolution, I think, makes them a city entity in their own form. They're sort of amorphous, and I think we do need to add that definition. So in that sense, I think my thinking kind of aligns with you there. But I don't think this is a huge turnaround in what we're doing. Denise?
Two things. There's also the third task force that you need to put in that's by resolution, and that's the climate action work group. So that one also needs to be included. But with the library, I'm just looking at the resolution now, and it may behoove that the task force per the resolution is we do a resolution saying that it's no longer needed in this capacity and that they go do the fundraising on their own and become like a task force for the fundraising and do the independent fundraising and help with grants. That's something to consider. If you do a meeting for fundraising and you're talking about who you're going to go ask money for and those things, that will need to be an executive session every single week, because you're talking about who you're asking money for, who knows whom, and those things. So that would need to just be an executive session from this point forward, pretty much.
Okay, thanks. I think it's a good point. Well, I guess, is council interested in taking this maybe to a work session and talking, I guess, in a sense, building on top of Nancy's idea of looking at the special committees section of the code and then saying we need to go back to these existing groups and figure out be more specific about their purpose, their membership, the vetting, the scope, what kind of influence they have on staff, if any, or liaison position. Denise?
Mayor, one other thing to consider is all of our public meetings are in the evenings to make sure that the public can attend. So the question would be also, should all the task force start meeting in the evenings so that the public is able to attend, et cetera? So that's another thing to consider, which then we have duplication meetings, those things, but just something to consider as you're looking at this.
Okay, thank you. Trying to get a sense of what council wants to do.
I support the work session as you stated.
Okay, let's go around here. Michelle? Particular direction. Nancy? You could live with that. I could live with that. John? Okay, so we'll put this on a work session and we'll flesh it out. And the sense I have is that direction we got from Mr. Parker is helpful, and we'll hash this out and we'll try to get, we're on the good side of the law.
Can I make one last comment? And
Please.
I did hear gentlemen's concerns about the city co-opting community-based groups. I mean, ultimately, my advice was that you just want to be clear about what's an official city task force and what isn't. And then the next step was, here's how you make a determination about what's an official task force and what isn't. And you look at the resolution that's been passed and what it says. And, you know, I wasn't trying, I don't want my advice to be misconstrued to say that if a group of individuals in the community want to work on an issue and they want to get together and take an interest in an issue, the city council could just pass a resolution tomorrow and make them a city task force or an official city group, because you can't force people to become an official city group. So I was more looking at it like, how are you clear? How do you cover your liability from what the city's actions are? So, I mean, if any community group wants to get together and work on an issue, they could certainly come and present at the city meetings and public comment. You know, the city's still free to work with community-based groups. You don't have to make them an official city group. So I just don't want anybody to think that the city is just going to be able to just take over all these groups whenever you want to. So.
Okay, great. If council doesn't have objections, that'll be our plan to discuss it in a little more detail in a work session. I'm sorry, Judy.
I just have a quick, I don't know if it's quick, but a clarification question. So it sounds like at this point, it's been determined that those three groups, those three task forces are official task forces for the city. So that being said, moving forward, and those groups are still meeting regularly. I guess my question is, who do we have staff liaisons to all those? Who's handling the agendas and the postings and the minutes and those things that have to be done now? And it sounds to me like officially starting as of like now, that will have to be done. So I don't know how we're handling all that as far as finding out who those people are and who's managing those.
I mean, good points. Yeah, the more we look at this, the more questions we have. We need to work some answers. And
I have a suggestion, if I might, Mayor.
sure.
What if we can't prohibit any meetings by either of those three, any of those three groups for the next 7 days? And we discuss this at a work session next Tuesday night so that we can give Judy Morgan clarity as to what she just mentioned, who's in charge, who's doing the minutes, postings and so forth, location. I would imagine the meetings would all be here in City Hall. I think that would be the safest thing, don't you, Jeff? Just don't have any meetings this next week.
Well, yeah, I mean, ultimately, I haven't even seen these resolutions. You know, everybody's just concluded that these are official city task forces. Sounds like they probably are based on the resolutions, but you know, ultimately, you know, you ask a lawyer if, you know, to do the least risky thing. I'm going to tell you the least risky thing is that they don't do anything until you guys decide how they're going to operate. So, I mean, I really can't give you any better advice than that, but I mean, so the safest legal advice is that you basically can't have them doing any official work for the city until you figure out exactly how they're going to be run and operated.
Could I ask relief from that? Because Hiawatha Gardens Task Force is supposed to meet on Thursday. We have a schedule with the contractor to meet on Thursday, and I'd already made arrangements with Judy to post the Zoom link on our website within the 24 hours.
Can't we do a 24-hour posting of the meeting as well?
That's exactly what I made arrangements.
Oh,
with
I
Judy
thought
to
you
do.
said you were asking for an exception. I
No,
misunderstood.
I'm asking for an exception that we can meet within 7 days.
Well, so long as it's posted properly and all that.
And we've been posting our minutes for well over a year. So we've been we brief to council periodically or, you know, fairly frequently. So, I mean, I'm concerned about the transparency questions as well, but it'll be posted. The Zoom will be there. So that's all.
And actually, next week's work session looks pretty full. It's pretty heavily loaded and there's quite a bit of work to get those things done. So I don't think it means that next week's work session is really feasible. But if we've got a workaround for Hiawatha Gardens, and I don't think I don't know for sure what the plans are for the library folks, but they could probably go ahead and give notice. I mean,
Well, yeah, I mean,
see that's
the
probably-
biggest issue here, I mean, first of all, they've been functioning for how many years now with no issues. The biggest issue probably is just complying with the open meetings law. And so if everybody just posts their meeting 24 hours in advance, open to the public, there won't be any issues with the open meetings law. It's just that this is one of those things where obviously I'd like to take a look at the resolutions. I'd like to give you some options for revising them. I don't even know what they say. So it's hard for me to give you advice other than knowing what I know now. I can't give you great advice other than to say, be careful, comply with open meetings law. And we can try and get this resolved as quick as we can to be clear about what their authority is and how they have to operate.
right, yeah, and those resolutions were more about to the purpose, but the groups, but in kind of a vague as far as their organizational structure, and that's what's become the concern right now. So, well, if the groups that do meet, if they can just meet the open meetings law, post accordingly, I would think that would be sufficient for now.
Well,
It
yeah, I
sounds
mean,
like
yeah, the other issue you're gonna, I mean, I don't know what these groups' positions are, frankly, but if one of them is gonna say, hey, we don't believe we're a city group, we're our own group, we don't want to even comply, we don't care what you say. You can't do anything about that other than you're saying you're operating outside of the parameters of our resolution and you're not operating within the scope of our authority. So at least the city's not going to be on the hook.
yeah, but as long as they're not trying to spend city money, I don't know. That's a big problem.
I don't know. Have they ever spent city money? Nobody has authority to sign any checks for the city. So I
Right,
don't think that's an
right.
issue. So.
Mayor, there's two things.
Denise, yeah.
One is the Climate Action Work Group. Do you know when they're meeting again, Judith?
They meet the third Wednesday of the month, so that would be, I think, the 19th. So I can reach out to the group and inform them of this meeting or whatever you
Maybe
advise.
Judy, well, yeah. The other thing is we also have to then inform them of the Sunshine Law. They can no longer be talking among themselves. They can't be sending emails out to everyone if we're going to go under this. So we have to basically stop everything with these groups until we have time to come back and figure out how we're moving forward, and let them know of all those things. So all of that needs to be addressed. We can get something out to all three of them because they're the three task force, and we can get something written. We'll ask Jeff or Judy to help and get it out to them tomorrow, address it, and then say we've got to wait until we go forward. I will say the 19th is the same for the library with the capital campaign, where we're really going to start donations. But I think from my perspective is that the library task force just needs to be eliminated and they go do fundraising and they do it on their own and with support from staff if I so want to volunteer to do such.
My last comment would be that your other option is as you're sitting here, you can do this in your work session whenever you have time for one, is to decide, well, ultimately, we don't want this group to be part of an official city group because it's just too much, doesn't function very well. You can still work with these individuals. We can have like some sort of parameters of how we're going to work with you, but you're no longer an official city group. Go do your thing. And then the city is going to be clear that you're not an official city group, but staff can still interact as directed by the city council, as determined by the city administrator. So that's another option for you to consider. I just want you to be clear one way or the other. That's what I'm really
Right.
thinking. legally.
Well, and one of the reasons this came up is the other counterpoint to that is that there are people who don't like it being private or a secret, as Rob called it. People want transparency because there is so much involvement of city staff with these groups and so many behind the scenes discussions that and only two council people can ever attend without it being formal. So that's the other side of it. That's why there's interest in pursuing this.
And this is a little bit unorthodox, but Rob, you're waving your hand. What comment do you have?
Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me to respond. There's just two things, really. One, when Jeff was talking, when we had approached the city about 2 years ago to see if they would formalize a resolution to just symbolize and acknowledge a working relationship with a community group and the city for the betterment of the Carnegie Library, That was what the intent was. We never knew, we were never told. I don't think it's even stated in the resolution that by us doing that, we are now under the auspices of the city. So whatever resolutions you do come up with, it should be made clear to whatever group beforehand that you are going to be now official part of the city operations. And the other point is dovetailing off of what Denise was saying. Just so you know, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here, but back in October, the Carnegie Library Task Force had started to grapple with what is our shelf life. We have been doing it for over 2.5 years now. And we were making a determination of when the city approved the final plans, which you just did, maybe that is the time for us to devolve, to disband and function in a different way, more in individual efforts. And so Denise, as you're talking about it, that may very well be, that was kind of our own evolution. I want it just to be made clear that if that's the way that the task force decides to go, it's been a discussion probably for the last 4 months of when does our purpose as a unified group change. And so I know that's something that the task force will be coming forward to discuss with you. So I wanted to also help you in your work session discussions, maybe have a conversation with at least the library task force to see maybe a moot point. We may have already decided we no longer want to be a task force in the way that we have been. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let me simplify things. Okay, so I guess we'll be looking at this at a work session and adding more clarification if that would be the intent. Okay, if there's
Mayor,
not,
I still need clarification. What are we doing from this point forward? Are we saying to all task force, do you want us to send an email out tomorrow? No meetings, no talk about the sunshine law? What direction do we need to go?
I guess my sense of it is that we tell them that if they want to meet, they just have to declare the meeting to be public and just notify Judy and we post it and put it on the website and then go ahead and have their meeting. I mean, does it? I think it follows the sunshine law. I mean, certainly that would be the open meetings. The sunshine
Would they
law.
all be required to have a YouTube video?
I wouldn't think so. No. Jeff, you want to talk to that?
That's not a legal requirement.
Okay, so they just need to post their minutes once they're prepared and give those to Judy to upload, and then a minimum of 24-hour, preferably more advanced notice. Does that do the?
And it
what you
also
need,
has to
Judy?
be in a place that's posted that the public can attend.
Okay,
So that doesn't seem to be too great a hardship. It's how Americans have done it for a long time, or at least we're supposed to. Okay,
are you okay, Denise, with notifying people of that? What we just said? Is that good?
Yeah, if that's the direction that council has given, we'll work on getting some notification out to the 3 task force groups and talking about the sunshine law, emails, conversations, and the required posting from this point forward.
And maybe let them know that they'll eventually be invited if they want to provide any like input in advance or something prior to our work session eventually on this, in case they have some input.
And
yeah,
I mean-
okay, Natalie?
and maybe also mention that you do also have the option to opt out.
I can definitely.
Because I think
take
that like
the
Rob is
option.
aware of that, but I don't know that anyone else is aware of
Okay.
that. So it doesn't feel fair to the other groups to know that they can also choose.
That depends, because they might opt out. There might be 3 people on a group of 15 who opt out, but the rest may still be in. So I think it's a little maybe premature to be explaining about opting out, but
To the group.
Yeah.
That the group doesn't have to remain a task force under the city. Okay.
Okay. There's nothing else. Let's move on. And so the last thing is Citizens Academy format discussion. And I guess this is something that it came up and this is at the same night that we brought up the question about the task forces and the work groups. It kind of trailed over into the idea of the Citizens Academy. I think Denise's original intent was to have just this educational situation with the 20 participants. I think the discussion that night was that if it's public business, it should be a public meeting. So I guess my feeling now is that it should be a public meeting. I think it was last Wednesday, Councilors Wolfshade and Chandler indicated that you'd be attending the meeting. So I guess we need to clarify this a little bit. In my mind, it would be similar to it. The way this would be structured would be like a work session. You'd have your participants and they would be interacting with the staff who are presenting. And then being open to the public means anybody in the public can come and sit and listen. And like a work session, they would watch and listen, but they wouldn't necessarily be allowed to speak. So that's my sense of it. And that would be, you're content with that. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. So, so anyway, that was my sense. And I want to make sure you're on board with that. So I think that could work well. I kind of like that idea. Nancy.
Yeah, I'm very much apparently in the minority on this, but I very much disagree with that. I think that an educational opportunity is not discussing city business. It is educating the participants on how the city runs, which is a very different thing. Education is not city business. And you wouldn't have a seminar where just, at a college where just anybody can show up. The idea of a seminar is that people can feel comfortable in discussing whatever they want to discuss and feel comfortable in doing that without being in a fishbowl, which is what we're creating now. And it changes the whole tenor of how the seminar works. And I just think that's very, very unfortunate. I don't think it's fair to the folks who signed up and were told that they couldn't come or they couldn't participate, but now they can go sit in the audience. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I guess, where do we draw the line? If we're calling everything city business, does that mean I can go to Roy's office and sit there because he's discussing city business on the phone, or I can go sit in Judy's office because she's discussing city business, so I have access to that? I think at some point we need to draw the line between what is actually, what is this called? The local public body making determinations, and what should be not in a fishbowl, and allowing people to be much more forthright than they are. And I know that I don't say things in this forum that I would say in a work group potentially, because it changes the discussion when you're being watched all the time. So I'm very dismayed at the direction this is taken. It also, and it should be fun. When they're in a seminar in an educational environment, it should be a fun thing. And I think it's very hard to have fun when you're being examined. I've thought a lot about the pros and cons of this, and quite honestly, I don't see the pros in having other people show up at this. Even something as simple as food. I know when Denise had briefed this to us, she told us she was going to have snacks for them. Well, if you don't know if 100 people are going to show up, you can't very well have snacks. And when it's nice to have snacks. So anyway, I'm very dismayed at the direction this is taken, and I just wanted to go on record with that.
Okay, thank you. It seems to me like if somebody's thinking of running for city council, they'd better get used to living in a fishbowl, but I can appreciate your comments.
But I don't know that these people are running for city council. Is that their reason for being on it? I thought the academy was simply for to learn how city government works.
It could be. Julie?
It's already been publicly stated that one of the goals is to see if we can get more people in town interested in running for city council through this academy. And so while the main goal is education, you can't really parse out city business from this is the fire truck. See, it's red. Okay. It's all merged together. And so I feel very strongly in support of the mayor's position that this should be a public meeting. And you know, if it changes the discussion because maybe things Denise or somebody wouldn't say something if they thought the public was listening, then maybe they shouldn't be saying those things because this is a public forum. This is an educational program. We're paying our city staff, who's supposedly too busy to work on a lot of other important things, to do this. So it's important to them. It's not just to say, look, this is a fire truck, see, it's red. There's going to be city business and city matters interspersed with these sessions, I'm sure. So I think it's totally appropriate for it to be open to the public and publicized.
Okay, thank you. Michelle and then Judith.
When I went to the Colorado Municipal League last summer in June of 2022, out of the 350 some attendants that were there, the average person was probably in the ages of between, say, 50 to 70. And I was a minority. And when I say minority, I'm meaning I was probably the only Asian person there, unless I walked up to someone and they were Japanese American. And as I was there, I was talking to other attendees and also to my son, who is now 27. And Colorado as a whole, there aren't that very many young people who are interested in participating in government. They don't know where to start. They may not know where to start. And I also agree with Councillor Fortune that this coming up is educational. The 20 people that signed up, they were the first 20 people that signed up. They weren't like handpicked or anything. And I agree. I mean, if I were one of the 20 people and then all of us, and I'm not on council, I would be a little nervous on it, on asking certain questions, because I feel like it would be like going to, like Councillor Fortune said, going to an educational meeting, or I'm sorry, an educational class at a college that I'm attending. And then you have the president of the college there also. So yes, I'm in the minority too. And my understanding is, or not my understanding is, can I ask the three of you why you want to attend these educational sessions?
I guess if you want to respond, you can. I don't think you have to. Yes, Mr. Shade, go ahead.
I think that basically it's healthy that we do it this way. Okay. I think if we find that for some reason there are unintended consequences, I'm willing to evaluate those later. But I think it is good and healthy that we have open public meetings, okay? And that anybody be able to hear. It's a different thing if you go in to talk to any member of our staff privately about your own private business. Then I think you have an expectation of privacy. If you want to come in and talk to them about a particular matter, about your business, your property, you want to talk to the planning department or something like that, I don't expect that that is on camera and somebody can view that. But I think that when we have 20 people in the public, okay, I don't see if you look this evening, how many people were here for a public meeting? And I think we had very healthy, okay, interesting, animated discussions, okay, in which I don't think people were necessarily unable to express themselves in an honest way just because there were people here present. So I think I think that the notion that in college classes that you have essentially a cultivated group. This isn't true anymore. Most universities, all the classes are broadcast for free for the public, okay? I went to a public college campus. Every single class was open to the public. There wasn't ever a situation in which somebody in the public could not sit in the class, okay? You couldn't necessarily, bring materials to be graded or something like that, but you were certainly welcome to sit in the back of the room and listen. So I think that's all this is asking to be done. So that's my comment is that I want to make sure that essentially things that are going on down here that are using a significant amount of public resources, 9 classes. That's not just 9 hours of one person. That's 9 hours plus preparation time, plus staff support time. That's a significant amount of public resources that are being used. And I think it's okay. And I think we're going to probably find there's not that many people who are going to come down here and listen in on all 9 classes. Does that help? Thank you.
Thank you. Judith?
Wow. Thank you, Mayor. I wasn't going to say anything tonight because I thought the packet was very clear. We are to make sure that we adhere to meeting laws. If we are in attendance, we are not part of the class. That's clear to me. But I feel like I have to address what I feel is almost a sense of some nefarious, underhanded kind of thing about attending. That is the exact opposite. When I saw on the city website that there was going to be a Citizens Academy, there was going to be 9 courses over 3 hours. I thought, wow, I wonder how long that took to put together. That is a tremendous amount of staff time. I am so excited. How can I support this? How can I show these people that want to attend that city council supports this? And so I just find it, my blood's about to boil because I find this so disingenuous that I, as a city council member who is voted into office by these people, cannot come and sit quietly in an educational seminar where, one of the things I thought, Michelle, about attending is that I'd learn something, is that I would actually learn something and be a better council member. So to answer your question, that's one of my goals of attending. And my other goal of attending is to show support for this program. I think that when people, I'm sorry, I'll tone down. I'm really upset. I can't believe that we're having this discussion. If people who attend this academy see city council members who, I have other things to do with my life. This is a full-time job just sitting in this chair. But I've committed to coming to some educational programs, not only because I might learn something, but because those 20 attendees might go, wow, there's some city council people in the room that support this. And so that's why I will be there. And, perhaps, maybe you should come and who knows, maybe we'll all learn a new thing or two.
Thank you. Denise?
Yeah, it is correct. It does take a great amount of time. I think all the department heads will tell you that. But if from Councilor Wolf's comment, if this is not something that council wants us to do, we can stop it. If there's other higher priorities that we're not meeting your needs, let us know and we can manage that. This does take time and we are working as best we can and we've been putting it together. So, I would just ask if this is something you guys want us to do, we'd love to do it. I've been talking about it for 6 months, would love to do it. But if we're not meeting needs because of this, please let us know and we'll cancel the class and we'll figure out the other things that we need to do for you to make sure the needs are met.
May I say one more thing?
Go ahead.
I just want to say that when I was new to council, I'd served on many boards in my professional life. And yes, did they prepare me for this? Somewhat, but I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I was offered an orientation, which helped me immensely. But really, when I saw this Citizens Academy, I thought, if there are people in this group, and there's apparently a waiting list, so there might be another group, if this is successful, and we have people that feel like they've gotten an immense orientation so they can ask themselves, do I really want to run for council? Knowing what I know now, what do I need for support? So that's another reason that I was very interested in this, is that, none of us certainly got this orientation, and I was grateful for what I got, but this would be phenomenal. And I wanted to be successful. And so anyway, I'm
Okay. And I think this academy idea is a good one. I guess it was during a PPACG meeting at the last one. I was having lunch with several mayors. I just mentioned that we were going to be doing this, and they thought it was a good idea. And they were typically from smaller towns too. And we were talking about the difficulty in getting people not just to be on city council, but to serve on city boards and just to have public interest. And of course, the irony is that, and Callahan's a good example of this, everybody lays low until you decide to change the zoning ordinance. And then, boy, they all come out of the woods. A town of 800 people suddenly has 1,600 people in a city council meeting. So yeah, I think this is an opportunity that we're close to it. We've already put a lot of time and energy into it. So let's walk through it. Let's execute the plan. I think that we have city council members who are interested in attending. We'll just declare it as a public meeting. If anybody else wants to come down, they're welcome to it. Bring your own snacks. I think it's a good thing. So, is there anything else on this? Okay, all right. Oh, I'm sorry, Natalie.
I was just gonna say, and I know it's implied that after it's over, that we do look back on it, get feedback from the participants and see what worked, what didn't, all those aspects. And I think that would include our participation.
That's a good point. Thank you. You remember to do that, right?
I will.
You'll remember to remind us all?
I will.
That's your job?
All right.
Okay. All
Mayor,
right.
we will have a survey after each class that we can share also, because we've already put that as part of the class. So we'll have those.
Okay, great. Thanks. Okay, let's go on to council correspondence. Anybody have anything? Nancy?
Yeah, this will be real popular too. At our last meeting on the after the match, or during the match presentation, we talked a lot about perceptions of conflict of interest. After that session, and I just want to go on record saying I have absolutely no question about Neil Minch's integrity. I watched him go through an extensive conflict of interest with the entire match committee, and people recused themselves, people revealed what they might have conflicts on. So I know that they did a lot of work with that. So, but I did note that the perception was still there. Anyway, the next day or a couple of days after that meeting, I got a call from a resident who was very concerned, who had listened to the discussion, very, very concerned particularly about the discussion of the Summerfest issue, in that there was, on that individual's part, there was a perception of racism. So I just wanted to, and just like with Neil, I have no issues with his integrity. I don't think anyone on this council is racist, but I think it's important that be aware that there is a perception in the community that that might exist in certain ways. So I just wanted to let the council know that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to let you know that I will not be in attendance at the meeting on the 18th of this month. And also, I will be attending the Downtown Colorado Inc. Conference, and they specialize in forming DDAs. So I'll be doing some research and getting some information there.
Okay, great, good to know. Thank you. Okay, Michelle?
I would like to go on record that I did not get an invitation for the community meeting regarding Rexton on March 25th. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, no, Nancy said she didn't get that invitation either, so. Okay.
I
right.
think that was an informal community meeting.
It-
It wasn't a
it-
city council
It,
thing.
it was an informal community meeting. Yeah, it wasn't an official city sanctioned meeting. It was essentially kind of a neighborhood meeting, but.
I understand that, but it is in my ward.
Right,
So
right.
thank you.
Okay, so no, that's, okay, good to go on record is that you didn't know. And mentioning that, my understanding is those folks had asked for a follow-on meeting, preferably within 30 days. Denise and I had discussed this briefly this morning about targeting Saturday, April the 29th as a possible day to have that community meeting. So we've got to work out some more details. There's quite a bit of preparation, but if you have folks who are interested, that would be the thought that we'd be looking towards April 29th, and we'll try to give an update later on.
Community meeting for what?
This would be a community meeting for the Ruxton corridor construction work. It's that neighborhood meeting. They wanted to follow on and I, they want to be taken seriously, and I think they deserve to be taken seriously, of course. So we'll share what we know. There's a lot that we don't know yet. We're in the planning phase. I also want to ask council, there was an email out to all council members to see if there was interest in discussing the bus changes. I think Judith, you had responded. I had a couple questions for Roy, but I don't know that other people are that excited about it. Do you want that as an agenda item? You want to talk about the bus routes? Okay, we'll put that on the agenda. Okay. All righty. I also want to mention Senate Bill 213 in the House, and I know Judith is aware of this. I think, Denise sent something out to all of us. Yeah, Judith and I were on a Zoom meeting along with several other Manitou people last Wednesday. This is a bill that would change the land use in Colorado at the state level and would trickle down. It seems to me like it create a great deal of havoc. So I had gone online and signed a letter opposing. I've also sent letters to all the committee members in that the State Land and Housing Committee, I believe it is, and also to our local state senator, Bob Gardner, and our state representative, Mark Snyder. So if you would like to familiarize yourself with that information, you can look at Denise's email, and if you want to sign it, that's fine. It's in committee now. If it goes farther, maybe council would want to discuss that. So let me know. I think that's all I've got. Denise, I guess.
Mayor, may I segue on that and just make it?
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
So I highly recommend, thank you for bringing that up, Mayor. I really appreciate that because although, as Denise has pointed out, we are a home rule, communities surrounding us would be very much affected, and it wouldn't take a whole lot for us to qualify for if it were to pass. It's an appropriations committee right now, but you can, and CML is very opposed to it, as are other organizations, but the Denver Chamber of Commerce and the Denver Health Association is really backing this. They've got some deep pockets. Highly recommend you go on the CML website. You can download an app to oppose it. I just recommend to you, Mayor, and I know you're probably already thinking about it. There's a draft resolution on the CML website. If this does get out of committee and looks like it's got some energy, we might want to consider a resolution opposing it.
I should mention also, Pikes Peak Council of Governments is opposing it and has sent letters. And I think there's going to be several people up there on Thursday to testify. Yeah, what you got?
I have a question about that. So Jeff, do I understand that, I know in this draft anyway, they haven't included the smaller cities, including us, we're not included, but if there should be amendments or some modification in the future where they want to include Manitou, do I understand correctly that it doesn't matter if we're home rule or not, we still have to obey state law?
So the bill attempts to apply to home rule jurisdictions. Whether the law supports that or not is a whole nother question. Because basically, zoning and most land use matters are traditionally a matter of local concern. And Manitou, like all other home rule jurisdictions, gets its authority from the Constitution itself. And so the state just can't pass legislation that's contrary to the Constitution. So there's gonna be a lot of arguments over how this works. I mean, there's some home rule jurisdictions might be in favor of what the state's doing, and then they would basically be passing legislation that's consistent with it. So that's fine. But if you're not in favor of it, that's the question, you know, does a local home rule jurisdiction have to comply or not? So that's fun for the courts. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the city administrators reports then.
Just to let council know that the stormwater team is working on cleaning all the drains, getting ready for the rainy season, which is around the corner. So you should see them out there working pretty hard at this point. Thank you. That's all.
Great, thank you. Denise?
I sent an email out this afternoon and it was, I don't know, right before 3, so you may not have looked at it. But Roy mentioned that we do have an EV van that we're test driving. And I would like to ask council, would you like to ride it and experience it? And if so, should we make it a council agenda and make it a formal meeting so that all 6 of you could ride at the same time, or all 7 of you, sorry. And we open it up to the public for them to ride also if they would like and go from there. Or do you want to do just like 2 at a time? So I just need direction is how many would like to go for a ride on this? And then do we want to make it a meeting or do we want to just take 2 at a time? If we did a meeting, it would be great because it would be one time, right? That would be great. Everybody would be there. The conversation, everybody would hear. We do have to take minutes. We have to record it. There's lots of stuff that comes with that, right? If we do 2 at a time, I'll have to just set out certain dates and times that's available. And then the first 2 that sign up get that time and then we go from there. So it's 2 at a time will definitely take more of our time, but it allows a more intimate experience and you get to see it. So I would defer to you. We only have a limited time. So I do need to get this. We need to get it booked very quickly. So I need direction.
John?
15 might right? Is that correct?
No,
Okay.
it'll fit 10 in the driver, but they are picking it up on Monday because it has to go off to Canada.
So we have basically this week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Saturday, I could drive people around. So I could do that if we wanted to do a Saturday morning. We could all go and get coffee. No. No. I've only had 1 accident at 16.
And Denise, when do we have to have it back or when do we?
Monday, it looks like.
Monday.
There. So I just need, I need direction from council tonight on this one so we can get it booked, however you want to do it.
Can I suggest we just have a show of hands as to how many people
Yep.
want to go?
That would be great.
I
That's,
would
yeah.
like to go.
Time matters.
So I have 4, I have 5. So how would Saturday, could I just look at us at Saturday? Does Saturday work? And I'll look at my calendar and see if I can make it work and I'll drive it. And if Roy wants to come in or something, and we'll do that and meet somewhere and go from there. Is that appropriate? Okay, thank you.
Sounds good. Just send an email. And
Okay,
let us know.
thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Anything else? Okay, how about a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Okay, we've got
I
2. All in
second.
favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, motion passed. Thanks, everybody. It was 5.